Yeah, it was an interesting chapter, and so I went when I came back. I decided to go to Europe. I had all sorts of people to see. I was to see Almirante in Italy, who was head of the who was the social movement in Italy, which they called the fascist movement. He also recognized Mussolini, much like the current party does. I was to see people in the NPD in Germany, which I met. I've known the leaders of those groups now for all this time, which is well over 50 years. I was going to go to France and see Jean-Marie Le Pen. I was going to Great Britain. Jean-Marie Le Pen's been one of my friends for years. In fact, on my 52nd or 53rd birthday, I'm not quite sure which year now. It kind of all runs together. Jean-Marie Le Pen hosted a birthday party for me in Paris, so we've been friends a long time. And I also decided to stop in Greece. I wanted to go visit our ancient ancestors, the Greeks, who were part of our Western civilization, and of course in Rome, and then Central Europe. But on the way, I also wanted to visit Israel. I already knew the Jewish question fully, but I said, you know, if I'm going to speak about the Jewish question or Israel, it'll be good to actually be an eyewitness, somebody who's actually been there. A lot of people talk about Israel who've never even been there, and to speak authoritatively on it and do some research and spend some time there and learn about it. And again, I was quite naive. You do some stupid things when you're 21 years old. And again, the overt Jewish power wasn't anything like today in terms of how it wasn't as recognizable, this apparent threat to shut us down. So I decided to go to Israel. I was going to visit Jerusalem. I was going to visit Haifa. I was going to visit Tel Aviv, travel the country. I wanted to see the Jewish kibbutzes. I wanted to understand if they were as communist as they were set out to be. I wanted to understand Jewish issues, how they were structured, and I also wanted to interview a lot of Palestinians, very quietly, but to see how things really were in that country. So I was flying in there. But the problem was that in my suitcases, I had all these books, like I had Spengler's Decline of the West. I had all sorts of National Socialist books like Mein Kampf. I had all sorts of other books. I had books by, I had books by Lincoln Rockwell in my suitcases. I had books by Elmer Pindell. I had books by so many others who were expert on race and Jewish question and everything. And I also had these brass swastikas from India. And when I left, the plane landed in. We were for a little while in not Afghanistan. It was in the neighboring country to India. I can't think of the name of it right this second. Anyway, the newspapers came out. They gave us a newspaper in the plane, and there was an attack, or there was a story about the terrorist attack at Lod Airport in Tel Aviv. And so I'm on the plane. Now, this is when I'm in the air. I'm reading this stuff while we're flying a long flight to Tel Aviv. And I'm reading this in the airplane. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, because they're talking about how they're making all the passengers get completely undressed behind curtains, and they're going through all the suitcases. And I said, they're going to find my suitcases with this all this material in these books, and then they're going to check up on the records from the ADL and these other groups in America, and I'm going to disappear. I'm going to be a victim of Arab terrorism or something, in supposed Arab terrorism in Israel. I said, I'm cooked. I was so moved by this and so worried by it. I penned a long letter to my father and mother, and I said, look, I'm sorry for all the difficulties I gave you because of my political activism, but I had to do it, and I'm proud of what I have done. And if you don't hear from me in a couple of days, please contact the American Embassy. But I'm very, very worried. So please contact them if you don't get a message from me after I should be at my hotel. I'm a small hotel in Israel. And I asked another passenger, in fact, on the plane, to mail it for me. And that was mailed, actually, and I was able to contact my my father and mother before they got the letter, so they didn't think I was dead. But anyway, so next thing I know, I'm in Israel. And I'm going through the passenger section, and we're going through the customs, and everybody is being forced to open their suitcases. They're going through everything, and they're getting people behind the curtain. And I felt like that. If you ever saw that movie Midnight Express about the guy that was smuggling dope into Turkey or something, that's the way I felt. It's like, oh my God, this is it. I'm over. My life is finished. What a stupid thing to do. I really felt like you idiot, you idiot, you idiot.
Yeah, and you just had books, no less. This wasn't even something that you should have to worry about. And
well, that's right. But you have to understand how they feel about all that kind of stuff. I mean, these people are hateful. But so anyway, so I finally go there, and I come to the place where we check in, and I put my passport up. And the guy says, go through. And I stopped for a second and said, oh my God, I'm through. They said, not even looking at my bags and not making me undress, not doing anything, what's going on? And then I realized, when I was as a teacher in Laos, I was working for the US government, and I had a red passport, like my dad did, who was also working for USAID at the time as a teacher. So that saved me. However, I went on into town, and I got this. I was on a student budget, basically, a small little hotel, and I checked in, and I really started going around Israel. I had conversations with all these Jews, including a lot of American Jews who didn't like the nature of Jewish supremacism. It was kind of interesting. I met this one Jewish lady who was a doctor on the beach at Tel Aviv, and she was telling me, how racist and anti-Gentile they were. She knew I was a Gentile, I was a Goy. And but I had a lot of interesting experience. I talked to a lot of Palestinians. And I was there for, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, something like that. And I had a ticket already planned out, a ticket from Tel Aviv flying to Istanbul. Now, before I flew on Pan Am, that was the major airline then, but going out of Israel to Greece, you had to go on the Israeli carrier, El Israel. And so I had a ticket for Israel. But the day before I was going to leave, I come back from some visits. In fact, I went to a kibbutz and stuff. I come back from a visit, and the desk clerk, he says, "Oh, Mr. Duke, there are some people here, from the government, and they wanted to check your room or something like that." So I gave him a key to it, and I said, oh, okay. I said, what was this about, right? And I went up to the room. I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on, because I'm sure they're going to look at my bags. And I was reading at the time. I was rereading Oswald Spengler's great book, Decline of the West. And I remember that specifically because that morning when I'm an early riser, and that morning I was reading the book, and before I closed my bags, I secured them every day because of the stuff that was in them. And I definitely put the book on top. In fact, I had it open on top like this, face down. And when I opened my bags, it was the wrong order. And so I knew that they'd been through my bags. And I'm thinking, oh my God, So I didn't know what to think. And I was really nervous the rest of that day. Really, really worried. And the next day, nothing happened though. Nobody came to see me again. Nobody called or anything, but it was obvious the government knew who I was, and they knew the stuff in my suitcase. I got on the El Israel flight, and starting in the morning, and then finally it got to Istanbul. It was Istanbul, actually, was the first stop. I had a lot of stops to make there. I wanted to see the Bosphorus, and then I wanted to go to Greece. So it was Istanbul. Let me get all my itinerary straight for you. And so I got to Istanbul, and by the time I got into the city, it was really late. The only thing I ate that day was, and I remember specifically, because everything around this I had a good memory for because of what happened to me. I had a chicken salad sandwich on the plane, given by the stewardesses, and that's the only thing I ate that entire day. And by the time I got to Istanbul, I wasn't feeling too good. I didn't even want to eat. I took some bottled water, had the fizz. I'm sure it was okay. It was very sanitary. And I took some bottled water and went to bed. In the morning, I planned to go to the Bosphorus, and I woke up with a really bad headache. I thought, you know how it goes, it'll pass. And I started off for the Bosphorus. I was on the bus, and I started really getting sick. My head felt like it was going to break. I knew I was running a fever. I was sweating profusely, and I had terrible diarrhea. So I was facing and vomiting. And I got off. I remember there was an Esso station back then. That was the brand, an Esso station in Istanbul. And even though I was on a budget as a student, you know, I said I just hailed a taxi. I usually had travel by bus, and I said, "Take me to my hotel." And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I decided I wasn't going to go to the hospital in Istanbul, to the normal public health hospital. It was impossible. And I said, I've got to get, I knew I was deathly ill. And I said, I've got to get to Athens, because at Athens is an American military base. And as an American citizen who was working for the American government, they would give me the top medical care I could get in the world. And so I grabbed up my bag and my jacket, and I've traveled really light, stuff my books in my bag. It was one big bag. Grabbed up my bag, got a taxi, said, take me to the airport. And even though my plane wasn't supposed to go for another 10 days, I just brought my ticket, and it was a changeable tickets in those days. And so I went up to the desk, and I said, give me the first flight to Athens. And I was sweating. I was afraid they weren't going to let me in the plane. I was obviously really, really sick. And I got in the plane, and all I remember, I remember landing in Athens, and I remember stumbling out of the airport, basically, and just falling into the backseat of the taxi and said, take me to the American Naval Base Hospital. I woke up 6 days later.
Oh, wow.
And so a very fine doctor came in, and they're familiar with a lot of poisoning and issues. It's a military hospital, a very big one, a good one. And the doctor came in to me, and he said, you know, he said, you were really lucky to be alive. He said, you were running over 105, 100, almost 106 fever. And we didn't know if we were going to, you know, save you. He said, the only reason that you were saved because we have really sophisticated anecdotal devices to tell what the toxins were in your system. And we were able to give us a suitable antidote, and we pulled your throat, you know. And so I said to him, I said, well, what was this? You know, I mean, what was this? What happened? And I remember the doctor saying it to me very clearly. He said, I don't know, it's extremely rare. He said, but it's a very sophisticated form of botulism.
Oh, wow. That's
pretty crazy.
So I have no proof that they tried to get rid of one more little activist in America, and it would have been so convenient, right? I would have just died in Istanbul, right? Nobody would ever connected that with Israel. I would have died of food poisoning in Istanbul and some hovel in the hospitals there. And, but that's a true story. And I can't prove that they did that. I don't know for sure if they did it. They may not have poisoned. Maybe it was just a bad egg salad sandwich. But after the visit to my hotel, the day before that, and I know that they knew all about me, and I was already pretty famous. For my college career, standing up for our race and heritage, and all the Klan chapters I'd started over, and white activist chapters started all over the country and the universities, that I could see why they would be very convenient for me to die from food poisoning in Istanbul. But I didn't die. And also, actually, I have some pictures of me from Greece. It's in my book too. I'm so thin. I mean, my God, I remember lying between the columns of the Parthenon and being thankful to be alive and basking in the magnificent. I have some great quotes, my favorite quotes from Greek literature as well, you know, about the struggle for ourselves, for our ancestors, and for our progeny. And that's why I felt that Greece was another very ennobling experience for me, and a very motivating experience. And I would suggest all you young guys and girls, for that matter, go to Europe, you know, get a taste of your ancestors, check out your genealogy. You can learn about that now today, and learn who your ancestors were, where they lived, the culture they lived in. Go back and visit there, and it will help you do what's necessary in your life to fight for our people. I had the same experiences too in Rome, and then going to Germany was an incredible event for me, and I met a lot of the NPD leaders and a lot of the really great people there. And then I went on to France, and then I went on and met a lot of the leaders in Britain at the same time. So it was a great experience for me. It was one of the things that shaped my life.